Well, hello there. I am Jessica Rhymes, and this is Rhymes Reimagined, where I will teach you all the possibilities of thrifting and DIYing. If that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing to my channel and turning on the notification bell so that you can know every time I upload a new video. Typically, you should expect videos from me once a week on Mondays. Today, I am doing a last minute, well, it was a very last minute for me, Christmas gift DIY. I'm also getting into the holiday spirit. This is one holiday tradition I didn't have to forego. I had to make my own eggnog, which is delicious. Oh, and it's also in a thrifted glass that I failed to include in my Christmas thrift haul. I couldn't believe I forgot these. I actually got 4 of these glasses with reindeers on them. They're from the Paper Source, which is a pretty expensive brand, like a gift Hallmark type brand. I got these a couple months ago, actually, and they were brand new in the box, so I was really excited about that, and they're really cute. I also have on my cute, I think it's cute, ugly Christmas sweater. It's just like I think the fabric is chenille. I have to look that one up. I'm not even sure what it's called, but it's that really soft fabric. We wore it a lot like in the 90s. This is a vintage sweater, so it's probably from like the early 90s, 80s. It's really soft. I love it. I really like the color. I like that it doesn't scream Christmas, but it has little holiday winter essence with the little snowflakes. I love it. This is definitely thrifted. Most of the time you can assume that my clothes are thrifted because they usually are. And then I also have my wonderful holiday face, because this would be my Christmas party weekend if there were Christmas parties to attend. But you know, with the pandemic, it just is what it is. So I decided to get festive at home with my festive eyes and my festive lip, my festive sweater, my festive hair, so that I can enjoy a Saturday night at home and enjoy my holiday libations. Enough about that. In today's video, we are going to be making, oh, hello, I have a dog guest too. We are going to be making an infinity scarf that I am going to gift to one of my awesome coworkers at my job. It took me probably about 3.5 hours to make this scarf. Mind you, I have to figure out filming, I have to figure out lighting and angles and all of that, so that probably tacked on about an additional 30 minutes. And then I definitely was tired, very tired, and I literally waited till the very last minute to make this. So it was no one's fault but my own. So I took many breaks, so it probably should have taken about 2 hours for like a moderately experienced knitter to knit this scarf. So it shouldn't take that long, but it took me that long. But I've made it in the past and I could probably get it done in about 2 hours. To make this scarf, I actually used my phalanges, my fingers, to knit this scarf, which makes it really easy when you're learning and you're beginning to knit, because you're not really sure what size needles to buy and it gets complicated. So having to use only your fingers, it makes it a lot easier to actually learn to knit the first time. Oh, Nina agrees. So you use your fingers to knit, and it makes it go faster because the gauge size of your finger is bigger than most knitting needles, so it makes it go a lot quicker than it would be if it was with like a small knitting needle, like a couple millimeters, a knitting needle. Yes, Nina actually really agrees with that too. Oh, So I consider this to be a great task, a great knitting opportunity for beginners. The finger knitting method is really helpful when it comes to gauging tension. I have a serious problem with tension when I knit with needles. I don't know what it is. I get progressively stressed as I knit for some reason, and I end up making the stitches smaller and smaller and tighter and tighter. Bye, Nina. It's probably for the best. So it's better to use your fingers because obviously you don't want to cut off blood flow to your fingers when you're knitting, so you know when you're getting too tight. So it's a good way to learn how tension works when you're knitting with your fingers. So we're gonna go ahead and get right into it. For this scarf, I'm gonna use one skein of the Bernat Softy Chunky yarn in the color dark green. I made the yarn into a ball to make it a little bit easier to work with. To cast on the first row, I'm going to pull off about 3 feet of the yarn. I'm going to put it on my left hand, making a big hoop between my thumb and my index finger on my left hand. And then I'm going to use my right index finger, pull the yarn in the middle, go under on the thumb, over to the index finger on my left hand, and then back under on the thumb, and that creates the first 2 stitches. You'll want to push those back to make sure that you have room. We're going to make a total of 14 stitches. So we'll do that again in slow motion to make sure we got it. We'll do it a couple times together in slow motion. So under on the thumb, over on the index finger, under on the thumb. Push it back. Okay, under on the thumb, over on the index finger, back under on the thumb. You can rewind and rewatch a few times to make sure you get it. And then I'm going to go ahead and speed it up for the remainder of the stitches so that this video doesn't have to be forever. That is the power of editing. I haven't knitted in about a year, so I'm going to fumble through the first couple of rows. So the only thing really of note in this section that I want you to pay attention to is how I keep the tail from the row that I cast on out of the way. And I'm only pulling yarn from the working yarn, which the working yarn is what comes from the skein of yarn. So I'll show you in the next section how to actually knit on, because I'm going to do a poor job in this section, and I'll skip ahead to a couple of rows after I've practiced a little bit off camera. So see how I just move the tail out of the way? Yeah, so keep that tail out of the way, because if you pull from there, you will quickly run out of yarn and have to undo the stitches that you've made. So move the tail and only pull from the skein of yarn, which is the working yarn. So I'm going to slow it down. What you'll do is grab the first stitch with your left index finger, make the new stitch with your right index, pulling it through the first stitch, pick up the new stitch with your left index finger and push it back on your left index finger. We'll do it a few more times in this nice slow motion. So grab that first stitch, make the new stitch, pulling it through the first stitch, and then picking up the new stitch and pushing it back on the left. Grab the first stitch, make the new stitch, pulling it through, and then grabbing it with the left and pushing it back. Grab the next stitch with your left finger, make the new stitch with your right finger, pulling it through the first stitch, picking it up with the left and pushing it back. Again, go back and rewind if you need to rewatch, so that you can make sure that you've got it, and have this video up if you need to when you make it. It makes it a lot easier. If you're like me, you will take a lot of breaks. So in order to use your hands for other things, you can use a pencil. I used a mechanical pencil because I could easily put it on there. And then if you want to come back, you can just slide it off the pencil or pen, whatever you use. I just recommend using like something with that can keep a hold of it. So that's why the mechanical pencil worked well, because a little clip could really keep it on so that I didn't lose any stitches, because you want to make sure that you always have 14 stitches. So count as you go. I wouldn't count every single row, every single stitch, but you can always, you know, when you're thinking about it, count and make sure you still have 14 stitches, because it's easy to drop stitches or add stitches. I have about an inch size ball left of yarn, and I know that that will give me 2 more rows. I'll stitch on my last 2 rows, and then I will actually cast off. That left me about 4 feet of yarn. I'm just guessing, I didn't measure it, but I'm assuming from this size that it's about 4 feet to the end of the yarn. So this is what I'm going to use to cast off. So what you'll do is begin like you're going to make another row of stitches. You'll stitch on 2, and then what you'll do is grab the first stitch and you will pull that over the second stitch and off of your finger. And you'll then put on another stitch, and then the second stitch becomes the first stitch, and you'll pull that one off. And you'll just keep doing that pattern over and over again until you don't have any more stitches left on your right finger. So pulling the yarn off, stitching one on, pulling the first stitch off. I have a bad habit of making the cast off row larger than the cast on row, so I remembered that halfway through, and I pushed the stitches closer to the tip of my index finger, which will help make the stitches a little bit smaller so that the 2 ends can match. If you saw me peeking over, it was so that I could see the end of the yarn to make sure that it was going to be about the same size as the first row that I made, so that they'll match, because it's an infinity scarf and you're going to stitch them together. They really need to match up in size. So then I'm going to take the very last stitch and pull it through, and that completes the actual scarf. Then you'll match the 2 ends up together, and you will stitch the 2 ends together. So I'll just slide the rest of that working yarn through to the other end of the scarf, and then I'll find 2 stitches on both ends and take the yarn and sew it through. It's really as simple as making just a regular sewing stitch. I don't know the name of stitches, but you're just really taking the yarn and using that as thread and sewing the 2 ends of the scarf together so that you can make it a true infinity scarf. So you'll just keep finding the 2 end stitches, matching them up so that they line up correctly. So just pull them out so that you can make it large enough to pull the yarn through. And then pulling the yarn through to the other side, and you'll just keep repeating that process until you get to the very end of the scarf. Now that the 2 ends are stitched together, I'm just going to check my beautiful handiwork to make sure everything looks good, nice, neat, and seamless, and it does. So you can barely even tell that it is stitched together. It looks pretty flawless, if I say so myself. Then you'll want to take the 2 tail ends and actually tie them into a knot. I'm sure you should do this some other way, but this way seems to work for me, so I'm just going to do it like that. And if you don't have the 2 tail ends meeting up, you can just tie the tails into a knot in the scarf on whatever end they are on. I actually tie it down 3 times to make sure that it's really tight and secure, and then I'll cut the ends, which will finish off the scarf. All done. I think it turned out great, and the person that I'm going to give it to, I think she'll really like it. I think I look fabulous in it, in my creamy knit sweater and my dark green infinity scarf. Let me know in the comments what you think, and if you're willing to try this out, I'd love to hear about your experience with it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas with your loved ones as much as you can, safely as you can, and I will see you next week.